Welcome to Moving People Forward with Mark Elfstrand. This program is a series of conversations on commonly seen challenges in everyday people's lives. We hope you'll be inspired by the stories you hear today. Perhaps you know of someone who would also benefit. Be sure to share the program link with a friend. Now, here's Mark.
Creating startups in Silicon Valley moves one into a very fast-paced lifestyle, and success often does breed, well, more success. And the demands for your services can be never-ending. Finding time to nurture and grow your spiritual side can easily fall into second or third place, and many times families can suffer as well. Well, today you're actually going to be hearing from a startup success story who has given wings to his faith in a most interesting way. You might say, for him, the sky became the limit. With me today on Moving People Forward is Paul Schaller. His personal life has been a quest of many sorts. We're going to unpack that in the minutes ahead. Paul, welcome. Glad to have you with us today.
Oh, thanks. I like the word quest. That was a good word, good choice.
As we will find out, as I said, in the minutes ahead. Okay, but you were a computer geek back in college, were you not?
I was, yes.
Yeah.
I confess.
Yeah, so you love the computer science kind of issues, but then you go on and to run businesses. I mean, those seem like two very distinctly different kind of life skills. How do you migrate those?
Well, where it was linked was that while I was not excited about information technology inside of a company,
okay,
I became enamored with selling information technology and creating information technology for others to be able to use. And so I went from the administrative internal IT role to a business role of providing products and services around information technology to others, to companies.
Okay, now you were involved in startups at times, is that right?
That's correct. We moved to Silicon Valley and I went through, probably about 4 main startups and then helped start as a founder and advisor, probably another 5 or 6 during our time there.
Seems like so many pieces have to come together in a startup to make it work. I mean, you got the people side of the business, but then you've got investors and you've just got the technical side of making things work. Is that the fun of the challenge in this?
It is, and for me, that the sequencing of events and staging of things so you didn't get too far out ahead of yourself, making sure technology was making progress at the same time that the business was making progress and you weren't too far ahead in one area or another, allowed you to provide and save money and also be able to create a winning combination. So it takes some work to be able to do that, but it's really creative and it really is fun to lead people in those kinds of endeavors.
Well, Steve Jobs' name, of course, became connected with Apple not only once, but then twice. Once when the board decided that they didn't think he was doing as good of a job as he thought he was doing. And Mark Zuckerberg's another guy that has just stayed, with his company such a long time. But some people, and like you, for example, have moved on to different, why do that? Why not just stay in one place?
Well, typically, people have limits in terms of how the size of an organization that they can be involved in. Okay. And in the 2 that you mentioned, those are people that it was their company, it was their dream, it was their vision for the whole thing,
right,
and they wanted to stick with it. And the board, for the most part, except for the gap you mentioned
right,
in Steve Jobs' career, stuck with them. But that's unusual. More often you'll have, especially a CEO, specialize in the early stage, up to maybe $5 to $10 million in revenue, and then maybe another CEO that would come in and manage the company through maybe $100 million in revenue.
Right.
And part of it is not just the complexity of the organization, but it's the interest associated with the problems that arise in those stages of the company.
Yeah, I've actually read that those stages, rare is the person really who can take you through all of those stages. Is that true?
Yes, that's true, and not just who can, but who wants to.
Oh, who wants to?
Yeah,
okay.
Because many times you end up with situations or issues that become more administrative as you're the CEO of a larger company.
Right.
The job changes a lot, and so I enjoyed the early stage and maybe up through about 50 million was fun for me.
Okay. How important is timing? I mean, you know, in terms of introducing products and in terms of where you are in the marketplace and so forth.
Yeah, critical. Timing is pretty much everything.
Okay.
If you come out with a product too soon, the Newton or some of the other products that have come out way too soon and have not been successful. So market timing is critical, which means having a clear understanding of the voice of the customer,
Yeah.
understanding market segments and competition and all the dynamics that are going on in the marketplace. And your time to development, how long it's going to take you in a development phase to get a product out and into the market.
What are the most challenging temptations for someone who is in that position of leadership, you know, heading up, you know, a very profitable organization?
You're going to get into some touchy
Well,
areas.
you know.
Temptations are always there to cut the time shorter, to try to jump ahead before you're ready, and a lot of times that leads to misset expectations and overcommitting to things. It's easy sometimes, especially in a development cycle, to think a product can get done a lot faster than it really can. The effort that it takes sometimes can be quite large. So the term there is it takes you 90% of the time for development to get through the first 90%, and another 90% to get through the 10%, the remaining 10%. So as you get closer to launching a product, the time seems to go slower because there's more things that need to be done.
Do you see the same kind of challenges impacting leaders of sizable nonprofits?
Yeah, I've been involved in both kinds of organizations, and I'd say that the challenges are similar. You end up with growth that happens. It's hard to hit a spark with a ministry. It's easier to understand the marketplace, I think, for commercial products than it is for nonprofit requirements, and where that marketplace is at and how to reach it is a little bit more difficult in the nonprofit world, I would say.
And when you're talking about investors on one side of the business, you're not talking about quite the same with nonprofits, but you still have the same concerns of satisfying a quote customer base, I would guess, to some degree.
Well, in that case, stakeholders, satisfying stakeholders. The venture capitalists have some pretty clear requirements in terms of growth and progress that they like to see achieved. So that's fairly clear. I think in the kingdom world, when you have kingdom benefits that are yielding, the investors or the people that are involved, the stakeholders that are involved in putting in capital, have their own issues. They're more committed typically to the vision than they are to necessarily performance. They like to see performance, but they're committed first to the vision and first to the purpose of the organization.
Well, what we're going to do is take a quick time out here, and we're going to continue our discussion here with Paul Schaller in just a moment, because somewhere about 20-some years ago, he moved his heart from the business side of life, strictly business, into a very important work with what is known as it Quest Aviation? Is that the title of it?
Quest Aircraft. Yes.
Quest Aircraft.
Right.
And we're going to find out more about why he did that and what was so significant about that work. And we're going to pick that up in just a moment. If you're just joining us, thank you. This is Paul Schaller, who's our guest, one of the creative minds behind several technology startups, and he's also been a guiding influence in mission aviation. And we'll continue on moving people forward in just a moment.
God is our safe place and our strength. He is always our help when we are in trouble. This word of God in Psalm 46:1 says it all. God is our safe place. He is our strength. He is our help when we are in trouble. Whenever and wherever we are invited, nationally or internationally, Lutheran Church Charity's mission is to bring the mercy, compassion, presence, and proclamation of Jesus Christ to those who are suffering and in need. LCC is a ministry of presence, to be present with Jesus, to lift up people in times of joy and sorrow, in prayer, and by passing through donations of dollar per dollar to those in need. Through our canine ministries, we respond and deploy with boots on the ground and paws within 24 hours, often sooner, of any crisis or disaster situation we're invited into. You see, for us, the bottom line is making a difference by being present. For people who are suffering and in need with that mercy, compassion, presence of Jesus Christ. Thank you again for allowing us the privilege to stand alongside and serve others. Jesus and your partnership make that possible to touch thousands of lives.
This is Moving People Forward. I'm Mark Elfstrand, and we're discussing how a person that is skilled in high-tech startups gave wings to actually help a ministry organization and also a commercial aircraft company. My guest is Paul Schaller, principal at Schaller Associates. And I haven't asked you about that, but Schaller Associates has been in business a couple of times, or has it been in business continually? What's the story there?
That's really just the name I use for my consulting activities
Okay.
and our private investments and some other things that I do.
Okay. Now, you did have an interest in flying well before you went to work with Quest Aircraft. Is that right?
I did. I became a pilot and went on and got my IFR certification, and we have had a family plane, and so I was able to fly different places for vacations and a variety of reasons.
I didn't ask you about your spiritual life, but that must have played a role, had a factor here in your deciding to get involved with Quest.
Yes, my wife and I had been working at Menlo Press in Menlo Park, California, and doing some things with small groups. And I had left that position and gone actually to run one of the companies that I'd helped was a founder of, and did that for another couple of years. And I decided that at that point I really wanted to spend more time with kingdom-oriented companies and nonprofits. So I went on the board of the Quest Aircraft Company at the time. That was a very small company just starting to design this airplane for mission aviation, and really enjoyed being on the board. And about a year later, I was asked to step in as CEO.
Which you were there for several years, as I understand it.
Yeah, I took down that role in 2004, and I was there through 2012.
Yeah, and so how did 2008 impact that industry?
Pretty substantially. We were at a very fragile point, but at that point we had certified the aircraft. We had type approval from the FAA. We had production certification, and we had produced about 40, 50 airplanes already, and we'd given several to the mission aviation field. So the original vision and purpose of Quest had pretty much been fulfilled at that point. We had a pretty good backlog of commercial aircraft because we were selling both to the commercial market for regular profits, and then also to the mission aviation organizations, basically at our costs. And the problem was that a lot of the people that were buying it for the commercial side were people that had several other airplanes, maybe like a lot of money, a cabin out in the boondocks someplace that they wanted to be able to fly to. And so with the stock market crash, they withdrew their orders. And so the company had to go through a resale or a selling process. And fortunately, a wonderful guy, a strong Christian that had been part of the original vision that was cast, stepped forward and wrote some checks for a while the company operated below the profitability line.
Was that Bruce Kennedy?
No, that was Dave Vandergren.
Oh, okay.
Bruce Kennedy was one of the original board members.
Okay.
And he was the one really that invited me to join. He was the chairman and CEO of Alaska Airlines at the time.
Yeah, and in fact, you had a friendship with him, and he had, we would consider it a premature ending of life with an aircraft accident, as I recall.
Yeah, God doesn't ask us for our opinion about what's right and what's wrong in these areas. Yeah. And Bruce had been to visit Quest the day before that, and had spent the evening before he passed at our home having dinner with us. And so it was a pretty traumatic event for the overall company itself. certainly a loss of a friend for me.
Yeah, tell us what's unique about the aircraft that Quest was developing.
Well, it needed to be able to fit in with the model that Mission Aviation had developed for really runways in its history. It started pretty much after World War II, and a lot of the runways were very short, very difficult. Some had some pretty substantial vertical lift in them from one end of the runway to the other.
Okay.
So landing in these very difficult situations and being able to then take off again in these very difficult situations was a requirement that we had, which led us to a short takeoff and landing aircraft design, and also a turbine engine, a jet-fueled turbine engine. And so it was a single-engine turboprop that we were using from Pratt & Whitney. And the reason for that was the extra power that we needed and the extra capacity then that the airplane could hold over the more traditional Cessnas and Pipers and other small airplanes that most of Mission Aviation was using at the time. So there was a lot of need for maintenance in the field, so we had to make it very easily maintainable. We had to make it very rugged, so rugged aluminum was used, and in many areas heat treating in order to be able to harden parts of the landing gear, things like that were very important. So it was a very special purpose airplane, and needed to be able to land and take off in about 900 feet or so.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Yeah, and the requirement was to get into 90% or more of the Mission Aviation airfields that were around the world at the time, and so that was really what we did.
Is Quest still, I know that the company is still in business, but I mean, is Mission Aviation still connected to them? I mean, are they buying aircraft from them or getting them in that way?
They are. As last I heard, I'm not an insider anymore, certainly, but last I heard there was about 35 aircraft, Quest Kodiak aircraft was the name of the plane, that were being used in the mission field. So it's pretty heavily used by the mission aviation organizations. But they also have a worldwide presence commercially, so they sell aircraft worldwide for people that want to get on and off the water specifically. Floats is a big application for them.
Now, there's a lot of talk today about business as mission. I'd like to know your thoughts on that.
So that's a really interesting area, and it's been one of my passions, sort of subtly riding through my career, is how do you live out your faith at work? How do you realize that your faith is more important really than your work? And the Sunday to Monday gap that most Christians have, where you spend Sundays with church-related things and the rest of the week on business-related things, to me always seemed a little odd, and because we're really called to faith 100% of the time.
Right.
So at Menlo Press, I was involved in a ministry called Straight Talk, which was a marketplace ministries. And so I generally got involved in marketplace ministries or men's ministries wherever I was at. At that point, when I decided to go to Quest, it was really because that I could look back and I could see that God had prepared me for knowing how to run startup organizations, having a passion for airplanes, enjoying and loving the Pacific Northwest, which was really beautiful, and for mission aviation and helping them. Is an incredible gift that mission aviation gives to the world. It's basically the ambulance service for many locations around the country, the world. It provides food and just all kinds of humanitarian aid, as well as, of course, Bible translating, supporting other ministries, Wycliffe and others that are involved in Bible translating around the world as well. So they really do much that's good, as well as much that's faith-oriented in what they do.
Yeah.
And so supporting that and providing them with a new platform, a new aircraft in order to be able to do that better was something that really struck a passion for me, and I seem to have picked up along the way in my checkered career, a variety of interests and skills that applied to this particular job.
Well, I know you understand the physics of what's taking place when a plane flies well enough so you can get in a plane and do that. But to me, that's kind of the start of the faith journey right there, when you're going down the runway and realizing that, you know, now you're up in that airway and yeah, you're taking some chance. Do you ever have any close calls?
No, not really. I mean, we had a few situations in the family plane that my wife might describe as being closer calls than I. But that's one of the things that a lot of training overcomes, is it teaches you that and simulates situations that you have to work your way through if you're going to fly. You need to know how to do that.
Well, Paul, I know that you have your own business, and it's probably not for the average person watching us today, but is there a website that you would pass along that you'd say, whether it's Mission Aviation Fellowship, or is there somebody you'd like to just mention here quickly?
Yeah, I think maf.org, and certainly Quest Aircraft is available on the web. Really interesting stories, some mission stories that are part of that as well. So, and JARS, New Tribes, those are the three, really, MAF, JARS, and New Tribes are the three larger mission aviation organizations that we work really closely with at Quest to make sure we had the right design for the aircraft.
Well, you've had really an interesting life. Thanks for sharing some of those stories with us. It's been fun to hang out with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Enjoy
Paul Schaller, yeah, good to meet you. Well, that's going to do it for our program today. As the sages have told us, grow in wisdom, think humbly of yourself, and love one another. May it be so with you. Join me next time for more of Moving People Forward. I'm Mark Elfstrand.